بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. I praise Allah and I thank Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. I ask Allah to send countless blessings and salutations on Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. And I ask Allah to grant us the sincere intention. Before we begin, I remind you of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in which he said, إن الله لا يجمع أمتي على الضلالة فإذا رأيتم اختلافا فعليكم بالسواد الأعظم. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and this is an important hadith that none of you should forget, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, verily Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala would never allow my nation to agree on misguidance. So whenever you see a difference among them, follow the majority of my nation. This hadith is an evidence to show us that the path of the majority of the Muslims in every time and place throughout history is the path of the truth. Because the Muslim nation as a whole would never agree on something that is misguidance. And among the things that the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has agreed upon is the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the methodology of our great scholars, the vast majority of the scholars of Islam was and is the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. May Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala allow us to stick to that methodology. And we know that methodology, as the great Imam Murtada al-Zabidi in his commentary on Ihya Ulumuddin, Ithaf al-Sadat al-Muttaqeen, he said that when the term Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah is used, what is meant is the Ash'aris and the Maturidis, the followers of Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari and the followers of Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. And in fiqh, when we say Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, what is intended by that is the Hanafis, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, and the Hanbalis. And those who follow the way of Sayyiduna Junaid al-Baghdadi, the people of Tasawwuf, that collective group is Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And alhamdulillah that we are following in the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and it is a sign of salvation. It is a sign of success and the avoidance of deviation, because whoever deviates, they are exposing themselves to the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, Yadullahi fawqa al-jama'ah wa man shadda shadda ila nar. That the protection of Allah is on the majority of this nation. And whoever deviates from that is deviating towards the hellfire. Walillahi alhamd. And we praise Allah for the ni'mah of following the methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Yesterday, my wires got crossed and I mixed up two different readings. So I read from book A, which was about the personal obligatory knowledge. That was supposed to be read on Thursday night. So forgive me, I forgot we were in part B for the Post-Fajr reflections, but I am human, bound to make mistakes. So please overlook my departure from our structure. But inshallah, we found some benefit in that. So we're on page 16 in the book B on the validity of following qualified scholarship. So we're at point B, section B 1.2. We read the first paragraph, and then we went to explain the conditions of the mujtahid by way of explaining the conditions of the mufti and the qadi. So we talked about that, and we mentioned 10 points in the Quran, 10 points in hadith, and then we mentioned al-qiyas and the Arabic language and knowledge of hadith and all those things that the mujtahid needs to know. And now we return back to page 16 and continue in discussion. So can you start at B.1, B1.2 again from the beginning, inshallah?
Yes. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, B 1.2. Remark by the translator. For the key term qualified to issue expert legal opinion in Arabic, mujtahid, this ability being ijtihad, please turn to Book O and read O 22.1, Section D, the qualifications of an Islamic judge, qadi. The difference between the qualifications for the imam of a school and those for a judge or a mufti is that the former's competence in giving opinion is absolute, extending to all subject matters in the sacred law, while the competence of the judge or mufti is limited respectively to judging court cases or to applying his imam's ijtihad to particular questions. No age of history is totally lacking people who are competent in ijtihad on particular questions which are new, and this is an important aspect of sacred law, to provide solutions to new ethical problems by means of sound Islamic legal methodology in applying the Quranic and Hadith primary text.
So here, remember, we're talking about ijtihad, which is issuing expert legal opinion. So the one who does that, the mujtahid, is of levels, as we talked about. So you have that mujtahid mutlaq, that absolute mujtahid, whose ijtihad is in all aspects of the sacred law, like Sayyidina Imam Abu Hanifa, wa Imam Malik, wa Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmed, and as we mentioned earlier when we were reading Al-Adhkar, like Imam Al-Awza'i, and Sufyan al-Thawri, and Layth ibn Sa'ad, and al-Tabari, and all of those great imams who were mujtahid imams. But also, because the sacred law has to deal with every new event, there is ijtihad fil masail. There is that expert legal opinion in different cases that come based on the methodology of the mujtahid mutlaq, of the absolute mujtahid. So there are people who perform ijtihad in specific cases that are new, that were not dealt with by previous scholars. But that is a restricted level of ijtihad, and it is only in those new cases based on the methodology of the absolute mujtahid. Now,
but while in this specific sense the door of ijtihad is not and cannot be closed, Islamic scholarship has not accepted anyone's claims to absolute ijtihad since Imams Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, and Ahmed.
so notice this point. So we don't say that no one can make ijtihad. In new cases, yes, mujtahid fil masail, in these new cases, it's open. As for absolute ijtihad that covers all of the sacred law, Muslim scholarship has not accepted that from anyone after the times of those great imams. And even if there were some who were qualified at that level, like Imam as-Subki, for instance, they always follow the methodology of those great imams because they agreed on their methodology, even though they were qualified at absolute ijtihad themselves. Now,
If one studies the
go ahead.
intellect,
That's why we say, and there is something I need to correct. La ilaha illallah. In traditional Sunni Islam, before modern day politics, Al-Sunnah was agreed upon the four madhahib: Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali. As for this concept that has developed recently over the last decade or a few decades, where they extended the madhabs to 8, I think people are misunderstanding what is being said here. So they add in the Zahiriyya, the Ja'fariyya, and all these different madhahib other than the 4. And people are telling people that, no, there's 8 valid madhabs. La, 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 la. That's not what the Zaydi, that's not what's being said. As far as Ahl-Sunnah, there are 4 madhabs. What they're saying is that these other madhahib, we don't consider them kufar. We don't take them out of Islam. But they are not madhahib of Ahl-Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Do you understand the difference? Don't be confused, because we as somebody saying in Azhar, they teach in 8 madhabs. They are talking about that. That is true. As for the official position of Azhar, that's been for 1,000 years, is the 4 madhahib. And they saying that these other schools, the Ja'fariyya, the Shia madhab of the 12 Shiites, Ja'far madhab, the Zahiri madhab, the Zaydi madhab, and there is one more, I forget, I think it's Ibadi or something like that, from Oman. So those 4 madhahib, which would make 8, they're saying that they're Muslim, not that they're valid madhahib to follow. Ahl-Sunnah know the valid madhahib to follow are the 4 madhabs of Ahl-Sunnah. Why? Because these madhahib reached us with an unbroken chain of narration. So be careful of that deception. It's sad that people are not intellectually honest. And the books of the scholars of Azhar are clear as the sun on a noonday in this issue. Clear, clear, clear. Very clear. So understand the difference between the two. And that's why when the scholars made this in Jordan, when they made, as Prince Ghazi made that conference and wrote that that treatise on these schools and that paper that they all signed and agreed, it was saying that we don't consider them kuffar. Not that these are valid madhahib, so you can follow all 8 instead of the 4. No one among Ahl-Sunnah who has followed the methodology of Ahl-Sunnah has ever accepted that. That is deceit. And if you read the article, you will know it for sure. That is straight deceit. And the books of the scholars of Azhar and the curriculum of the scholars of Azhar prior to now, Azhar's curriculum is going through a real change. But if you study with the classical scholars of Azhar, they don't teach outside of the 4 madhahib as valid methods to follow in its entirety. Not meaning talking about particular cases and mentioning what other madhahib said. We're talking about following, giving court verdicts, making fatwa by them, and legal rulings. By other than the 4, absolutely not. So that's something that needs to be clarified, because people are promoting that and deceiving people. So you can follow, it ain't just 4, you follow all these madhabs. This is not true at all. Now,
If one studies the intellectual legacy of these men under scholars who have a working familiarity with it, it is not difficult to see why. As for those who decry hidebound conservatism and would open the gate of ijtihad for themselves while lacking or possibly not even knowing the necessary qualifications, if such people have not studied the rulings of a particular school and the relation between these rulings, the Quranic and Hadith primary text, and the school's methodological principles, they do not know how ijtihad works from an observer's standpoint, let alone how to employ it.
Here, and this is the thing. So you have these people saying, I follow Quran and Sunnah, which is actually claiming ijtihad. That means that you're going to deduce Quran and Sunnah from yourself. I don't follow Malik. I don't follow Abu Hanif. I don't follow none of the schools. I'm going to do Quran and Sunnah myself. So that means you have the qualifications of ijtihad. And in reality, sometimes they don't even know the qualifications, let alone how to employ them. Because knowing something and how to do it is a whole nother story. So if one doesn't know it, how is it possible that you're going to do it? And this is something, and that's why we gave an indication of when we talked about the qualifications, some of the qualifications of a mujtahid scholar. And obviously we see that people don't have those qualifications. And that's why the majority of the Muslims and the scholars have followed the four schools, inshallah. Now,
To ask them, for example, which of two equally authenticated primary texts that
this
conflict
is
on
something nice. I want you to pay attention to this example. It's a beautiful example that the translator gave. I want you to pay attention to this. Now, go ahead.
which of two equally authenticated primary texts that conflict on a legal question should be given precedence and why is like asking an aspiring drafting student for the particulars of designing a suspension bridge.
Look at that, is so beautiful. If you ask such a person, there are two equally authentic, they're both sahih, primary texts, say like hadith, two sahih hadith, right? But they have difference on a legal opinion. This legal opinion, they got different rulings, right? From one hadith, you'll take one ruling, from the other, you take another ruling, right? Which one do you take and why? That's a question, right? And I saw that happen with Sheikh Samir and that Salafi person that was a graduate from the University of Medina. And when Sheikh took the same hadith he was using and showed that the hadith you using as an evidence is a proof against you, he was silenced, right? That's an example of that. And then he said, that's like asking an aspiring drafting student to give you the particulars of a suspension bridge. SubhanAllah. That's deep. I don't know a more eloquent way to put that. What do you expect a drafting student in school? And my daughter was doing drafting and, learning in school, in high school. And I know she can't tell you nothing about not as a suspension bridge. And that's deep though. I was thinking about that. I said, wow, that's heavy. That's heavy. That is a beautiful example. Or you can take a person who's a high school, artist and can draw cars and nice boats and all that, and then tell him to do the planning and development of that car and that boat and bring it to actual production. You're not going to get not even a beginner's answer. It's easier for that drafting student or that artist to do what you request him than to ask the novice to do ijtihad. Why? Because he only has a little area to do the boat or the car. It's just the boat and the car. It's not so much, even though in that field it's a lot, or the bridge, you're asking that person to take on the whole sacred law and everything that runs governments. Subhanallah. That's a lot. That's a lot you're asking. Now, go ahead. So
Answers
you
may
should
be
highlight that and keep it in your mind. So every time you talk to somebody talking about, I'm following Quran and Sunnah, this is a drafting student talking about he's going to make a suspension bridge. This is an art student talking about he's going to design and produce a Lamborghini. Subhanallah. Highlight that. It will keep in your mind what is being said to you. I don't need to follow no scholars. We can do it ourselves. Really? Okay. Subhanallah. I'm not getting on that bridge, nor am I driving that car. Go ahead.
Answers may be forthcoming, but they will not be the same as those one could get from a qualified contractor. To urge that a mujtahid is not divinely protected from error, ma'soom, is as of little relevance to his work as the fact that a major physicist is not divinely protected from simple errors in calculus. The probability of finding them in his published work is virtually negligible.
And that's the point. Someone says Abu Hanifa and Malik, they humans, hum rijal wa nahnu rijal. They're men and we men. They make mistakes, we make mistakes. The probability of you finding their mistakes and they're really mistakes, it's almost impossible, right? If they are mistakes, you finding them is very highly unlikely, because what you may think a mistake is really the reality of the matter, because you don't know the tools of how they arrived at what they arrived at. So you look at something, you say, he contradicting the hadith. You don't even know nothing about hadith. You don't know about hadith. So you don't even know the methodology by which they did it. You're looking at a final product, the ruling. You don't know how they got to that ruling. So you're just looking at the hadith. You don't even know how the scholars got to include that hadith in their books. But you're quoting the hadith and using it as a basis for a legal opinion without knowing the methodology of how they reached it. So maybe if you knew methodologies, you would understand that they're not mistaken, you are. Big difference. Now, go ahead.
Regarding other long-dead schools, such as the Zahiriya,
Zahiriya. Zahiriya was an old school that didn't use al-qiyas. And a famous among them, which you'll see all these modern day so-called reformists who don't follow madhahib, but they follow Quran and Sunnah, they rely heavily on the works of a man named Ibn Hazm, who represented the latter part of the Zahiri school, who made so many mistakes in his books, right? Those schools, which is they're reviving today, so that is one of those schools that they mentioned among that 8, was that school. So it's an old school. Now,
the difference between their work and that of the 4 living schools is firstly one of quality.
So pay attention, he's going to show you. So this was the madhab of Dawood al-Zahiri, and it really got its biggest support later from Ibn Hazm, right? And his book Muhalla, and they're using it today. People, especially all la madhabis, they're into the books of Ibn Hazm, those who don't follow madhabs, right? Or Shawkani, who is more of towards the Zaydi school. Now,
as their positions and evidence have not been re-examined and upgraded by succeeding generations of first-rank scholars like those of the 4 schools.
So let's get one point.
Ruling.
When we look at that school, we're going to talk about quality, number 1, right? The quality. The Zahiri madhab doesn't have a continuous unbroken chain from scholar to scholar to scholar. And what the unbroken chain is, hundreds of scholars who checked the work of previous scholars before them all the way back to the founder of the school, meaning the imam of the madhab. So that it's not this process of checking, rechecking. evaluating evidences, examining narrations. That doesn't exist as it exists within the four schools, because all of the four schools at every generation back to the Imam has hundreds of mujtahid scholars and scholars in fiqh and hadith and Arabic language and all the in usul and all the various Islamic science to check the work, right? To when you get that final product, which is the school itself, the rulings, they have been checked, rechecked, examined by experts in the field over and over and over and over and over again. And those other schools are not like that. So that's one. So the quality you're going to get when you have a team of experts, a team of experts. So say if we're going to make this computer or we're going to make a building, right? If anyone's worked in construction, before we get to the actual construction part of the building, a team of engineers, they test the soil, the depth of the piles that's going to go into the ground, how strong the structure for wind, for all of this stuff. That's all done before the actual even one shovel or one thing goes into ground. How deep it needs to be, what are the factors going to determine if we're in this area, we need to do it this way because of this factor and that factor. Then once you get that, then you got people that's going to come in that are experts at digging, that are experts in erecting steel, that are experts in putting framing around that steel, that are experts at putting window, that are experts in plumbing, that are experts in electricians, experts in carpentry, experts in even laying the tile, train people just to sweep the floor, right? That's what you have going on before you see a building. Experts who examine to make sure that everything is up to code, who are trained. OSHA, who comes in and makes sure everything is, all that goes into one building you see. By way of analogy, a madhab has higher expertise in all of its development till we get these rulings that we see. Much more involved and much more expertise. And that's why when you go in the building, you get a sense of safety. Why? Because you realize all this expertise went in it to produce that. Like you get in your car. None of us get in the car. Is a dangerous mode of transportation. An airplane is a dangerous mode of transportation. You're going down the highway 80, 90 miles per hour. That car might blow up if you crash. You put a lot of trust in those experts. But you're so comfortable that all these experts got together to assemble this car or to design this plane and to fly the plane and to make sure it's all right. You have a comfort in that, right? So you get on the plane and you're not really thinking about it's going to crash unless you just have a phobia. But other than that, you just fly and fly. And you're almost sure you're going to reach your destination. And what are you relying on? Of course, you rely on Allah. But in your mind, the experts who designed this plane, who manage and taking care of this plane, who's flying this plane, know exactly about this plane, know about the air, know about rain, know about wind. So you're comfortable. That's in your dunya. That is what the madhab does. The madhab is all of these experts, the same that you got that feeling of expertise from those who designed the cars and those who designed the plane and who did all the work. The madhab is much more intense than what they do. Much more. You don't need as much knowledge to design a car or a plane as you need to establish a school of Islamic law. You don't need as much study. It's not that much involved. If you understand what I mean. It's not that deep. It is deep, and it takes a lot of study, years, decades sometimes, to actually be an expert. But that work, if you learn about the Islamic scholars and what they got to know, those mujtahid scholars, where they say just in hadith, the mujtahid scholar, mujtahid mutlaq, should know at least 300,000 hadith with the chains of narration. It would be very rare to find an expert in any of these fields that memorize that much information. To give you 300,000 hadith, that would take you to memorize Bukhari let's say 40 times, if my mathematics are correct. In order to memorize what they need, that means you would have to memorize Al-Bukhari 40 times, right? So there's roughly a little over 7,000 hadith in Al-Bukhari, right? So if you multiply that times 10, that's 700, right? That's 700,000, right? And then give 3 more, roughly that, right? That much. So memorizing Bukhari all those times, right? Nobody got to do all that. I mean, you got to study, but you ain't memorizing all that stuff, right? All the books of engineering, all the books you studied in school, all of them, they're in your mind. You memorize every word. That's what the mujtahid has to do. And that's just in hadith. When I talk about Quran, when I talk about Arabic language, when I talk about all the stuff he got to have in his mind, that's a mujtahid. The best expert in the sciences of worldly sciences don't have that kind of information in their mind. Even though they're skilled, their minds are not like that, like Islamic scholarship. That are mujtahidun. I'm just giving you analogies so you can get in your mind what you're talking about. That's why our teachers used to say, when those people say, hum rijal wa nahnu rijal, they're men and we men, he said, no, they're men and you're males. There's a big difference between a man and a male. Now, go ahead.
And secondly, the lack of verification of the actual positions of the mujtahids through reliable chains of transmitters, as described below at B7.6.
If you go to W12, quickly, go to W12, which is on page, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Page 869. Page 869. You ready?
Yes.
So this is taken from the footnotes of an edition of Umdat Salik, Umdat Nasik, that was written in Syria. Go ahead.
The reason for various positions within one school.
So we're not talking about between schools. We're talking about in one school, right? In one school, we're talking about, because we talked about ijtihad, right? And now he's going to talk about levels of scholars. So you should know this as a point to show the levels of expertise in one madhab.
Levels of scholars. W12.1. Soli Muadhin. To clarify the reason for scholarly disagreement within one legal school, we may say that scholars divide each school into various levels, the most important of which, comment by Sheikh Nu Ali Salman, may be characterized as follows.
Here, so remember this. You got these people who say, I follow all the schools, which is like, oh boy, right? We're talking about when one school, and this concept exists in all four schools. So if a person says, I'm following all four schools, that means he's going to have to know all these levels, because all these levels have a position within each school, and they have a function, and they have work that was put into school from scholars of each level. So that means you need to know all these different levels to know really the makeup of the school and how the rulings of the school are the way they are. So you need to have this. So this is in one school. So then you would need to know this in one school. So in the Shafi, because this is going to talk about the Shafi school, the Hanafi school, the Maliki school, and the Hanbali school. If you're talking about, you're going to deduce rulings, right? Go, inshallah.
The most important of which, after the Imam, may be characterized as follows.
So
Number
the
one.
Imam is Mujtahid Mutlaq, right? That's the absolute Mujtahid, right? So that's the top level. That's the Imam himself. And those Muqayyid who are really like, they can fall into this next level. So let's just say the Mujtahid Imam, who's Mujtahid Mutlaq, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmed. In this case, since we're talking about the Shafi'i school, that Mujtahid Mutlaq is Imam al-Shafi'i. Go ahead. The first level, Al-Tabaqatul Ula, right? Go ahead.
Number one, the first level, composed of those qualified to do ijtihad, independent legal reasoning, within the school, deploying it according to the general methodological principles established by their imams, and who transmit the words of the imam, such scholars being called colleagues, including men like Mudani,
Al-Muzani.
Muzani.
All right, but stop. So you have the first one, Ahlul Ijtihad. I'm going to give you these. Fil Madhab. All right? That's the first level. All right, we're going to take our time. Get your pens out. Because I want to help you stop all this nonsense of people fooling us, right? Like they're scholarly and they're not. So if we know what's going on, even if we don't know the details of it, we kind of know what is involved. So you can't just tell me anything, right? So you got the first level is the Imam, Mujtahid Mutlaq, right? Then under the Imam, the first level of scholarship. So this is the Tabaqatul Ula, the first level of scholarship in one school. He says, Ahlul Ijtihad fil Madhab. They are those people qualified to do independent legal reasoning within the school, not outside the school, in the school itself. We're talking about in the school. Within the school, they can do ijtihad based on the methodology or the methodological principles of the imam. So that's their function. They are the second level under the absolute mujtahid. And in other words, you can call them mujtahid muqayyid. They are the mujtahid that are restricted. So you have the absolute mujtahid, and the mujtahid who is restricted are the people of ijtihad within the school. Now, so Al-Muzani, he is so they're called ashab, right? Companions, like Al-Muzani. What is the book that Al-Muzani wrote in fiqh, in Shafi'i fiqh? What's his book called? Al-Muzani. Come on, come on, come on, come on. And when did Al-Muzani die? What's the name of his book? And when did he die? I keep telling y'all every time we give you something, memorize, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. Muqtasar al-Muzani. And he died in 264. Good job, right? So Mukhtasar al-Muzani was in 264. He was this. That's his book in Shafi'i fiqh, and it was the basis of the books that came after it. What is the famous book that is a commentary on Mukhtasar al-Muzani that is very popular in the Shafi'i school? What is the name of the book? Who is the author, and when did he die? In repeating, there's a benefit. So what is among the most famous commentaries that we discussed of Mukhtasar al-Muzani? Who wrote it, and when did he die? I don't want you to forget everything we studied before. I want you to memorize it. So as we go on and we just building and building and building. So sometimes we have to stop and review. This stuff is a protection. When you learn it well, no one's going to come pull the wool over your eyes. And we need that in our communities because people have been pulling the wool over our eyes for far too long. So we need it bad. Come on, answer. All you have to do is study your notes. When you don't answer, you're telling me we're not studying. Because I gave you the notes, we made charts, we did everything. Come on, Farouk. You're late but early. Time for a question. What is the famous commentary on Mukhtasar al-Muzani that we mentioned? Who wrote it and when did they die? No answers? I know my computer's not broke. It's working. Come on, y'all. Come on. No answers? La ilaha illallah. Go look in your notes. We're going to stop right here. I'm not going to go forward till I get that answer. So come on. I don't know is not sufficient. You are a sheikh. Farouk said, man, would you leave me alone? No. Good. The date is wrong, but alhamdulillah, you're close. I just fixed the date. Nihayatul Matlab is a commentary of Mukhtasar al-Muzani, Imam al-Juwayni, right? There it is. Nihayatul Matlab by Abu al-Mu'ali al-Juwayni, 478. MashaAllah. Good. That is excellent. I knew we would get it. All right, I'm going to stop here. I was getting ready to go push it, but I'm going to leave it. So, yeah, that's all he needed. Put block on Farouk. I love that guy. MashaAllah. Tayyib. So that's Mukhtasar al-Muzani, right? Nihayat al-Matlab. Good. So that's first level, the level of Ahlul Ijtihad fil Madhab. And believe me, I want to share something with you so y'all don't get, I understand what I'm doing. This is advanced stuff. Common people normally don't need to know all this. But what we're dealing with is common people who don't realize they're common people, right? Common people, laymen, don't need to know this stuff. That's true. So normally, when we learn, we didn't learn this stuff till way later, but we were following scholarship. Today, we got laymen who think they're scholars. So what is needed for those laymen to put them back to laymen so they can learn properly is to show them what scholars got to know. And then when their circuits get overwhelmed, they'll go back to being laymen and learn properly without all the confusion. Do you follow Do y'all understand that point, what I just mentioned? Why I do what I do? She said, common people who don't know they're common. No, it's true. It's true. We have, because of the Salafi da'wah, that Wahhabi stuff, it got us to thinking we're bigger than we are. Give me your dalil, Ak. You don't even know what a dalil is. Give me your dalil. What type of dalil do you want? From where do you want the dalil? What type of dalil? From where do you want it? What type of hadith is a dalil for you? What type of narration is a dalil for you? What type of verse is a dalil for you? For what case? You just said, give me a dalil. What type of dalil? Dalils of various types. What you looking for? Dalil from what? And for what? And why is that dalil a dalil for what you're talking about? I mean, no, this is serious scholarly questions. So in order for us, I remember this, I'll never forget it. Sheikh Samir came to one of my lessons. He was in my class. And he's my teacher, but he was sitting in the class, listening to me. And I'm going through what I go through. And he said to me after the class, he said, why are you going through all these details with them? I said, Sheikhi, because if I don't go through this with them, they're not going to listen to you. They're not. They're going to say, when you just teach, they're going to say, he didn't even give no dalil. Because they don't know nothing about scholarship. So I got to show them what the scholar knows and his level and rank so that they would appreciate him and listen to him without imposing their false conceptions on him. If you understand what I'm saying. So I'm not trying to impress you. I'm really trying to educate you so that one day we can sit and then develop like we're supposed to. Because if we keep going in the pace we're going to be all over the place because we got people telling you it's a free for all. Be a maverick. Do as you please. Go for it. The doors of independent region are wide open. Go for it. Matter of fact, we're going to have our madhab for blacks in America. I mean, get that bad. We need an American understanding of the deen. Yeah, gets that bad. We got our own scholars and we're going to do our own work. Oh, really? No, I'm serious. And I know you have heard these calls from people, these calls to action. We could do it ourselves. We don't need no scholars from overseas, from anywhere else. We could do it ourselves. Really? Some things you could do for yourself, some cases, but you're going to take the whole sacred law and roll? Uh-oh, watch out. Watch out. You're getting ready to give us a new religion or no religion at all when you finish. That's serious to think about. Okay, so I hope you can get my point. Was this what I'm pointing out clear? Because I'm going to go to the second level. You got to follow me. I know sometimes it seems like I'm going in a pattern. I'm not all over the place. That's why I gave you a book. So you just follow and follow. When I explain, just put a pin in it. You know what I do? I would suggest all of you get you some of these sticky things, right? So what I do, whenever I'm talking and I got to go to another point, you'll notice I have these sticky things inside there. So whenever I'm getting ready to go to another point, I'll put one of those stickies where I was at and then go back so I know where to go back and where I'm based on, right? And you'll see if you come in my house after the corona. Right? All my books are marked up like that. You got a bunch of stickies all over the place because when you're studying, sometimes one thing leads you to another thing, then you got to come back and you got to train your mind to be able to have a basic text which you work with, and then other supplemental texts and other supplemental points to keep track, because things relate to other things, right? And you should train your brain when you're studying Islam to have multiple compartments where you store information, right? It's very important. So you have, this is the hadith department, this is the fiqh department, this is the aqidah department, this is the Arabic language department, right? This is usul al-fiqh department, this is the tasawwuf department, all over, right? So whenever you need to go and pull different points, because departments work together to make the whole company, right? These are all analogies so you can see what I'm saying. So sometimes we're working in the fiqh department, but we need to go to the tasawwuf department to pull one paper to complete our work in the fiqh department. Sometimes we're in the hadith department, but we need to go to the department of aqidah to pull a few papers or a file that we need for hadith. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that clear? I'm trying to get these minds rolling. But let's not forget, hadith is a department, fiqh is a department, tasawwuf is a department, Arabic is a department. So don't mix the departments. They're separate departments, though they may correlate to make the company, Islam, the rules of the religion work. But they are all separate. They are separate, independent divisions within the company. Don't mix them. And there are experts in each department, in each division. So the hadith scholar is not a fiqh scholar. His specialty is hadith, not fiqh. So when you need him for supporting evidence for fiqh rulings, not to give fiqh rulings. If you got me. All right, let's go back to where we're at. So we're on the second level, at-tabaqat al-thaniya of ijtihad within a school. Go ahead. We're on page 869. Go ahead.
The second level, composed of those qualified to do ijtihad on particular legal questions that were not discussed by the Imam of the school, including such scholars as Imam Ghazali.
All right, so the second level, and we're going to put a pin in it right there. The second level, so we said the first level is, what is the first level? What is it called? I typed it up. You should have wrote it down. What is the first level called of mujtahids within the school? Ulama, or scholars within the school, we should say. Because the title is Level of Scholars. Tabaqat al-ulama al-madhab. So what's the first one? What is it called in Arabic? I wrote it for you. So what's the first level? Allah. That's mujtahid mutlaq. That's the imam. What's the level under that? Good. Isa. Ahlul ijtihad fil madhab. What does ahlul ijtihad fil madhab mean? Translation. We're not trying to impress each other. What is ahlul ijtihad fil madhab? What does it mean? What does it mean? It's in your book right there, level 1. What does it mean? Now you see why everyone must have a book in their hand. Let's help. Some people that can't afford and they're shy. Let's send money to support them. And you put info at MMA book where they get a book from for those who cannot afford it. Don't be shy. We are family. We're going to make this work. We have a mission. So we'll work together to get it done. Put the link for those who don't have a book or cannot afford a book, what they need to do to get it. And for those who want to give sadaqah, please donate to this project so that we can make sure everyone who attends these classes has a book. Please, we want people to learn. We have a lot of work to do. And we need to facilitate all the tools. No one's going to educate us if we don't do it. So we got to help each other. No, Abu Yassin. Look at your book. First level, right? What is the first level? Those qualified to make independent legal reasons within the school. That's it. That's the first one. So there it is. Write that definition. Though ijtihad within the school. That's the first level. The imam is the absolute mujtahid. His ijtihad is for all rulings of the sacred law. Under him is those who are qualified to make independent legal reason within the school. All right, we'll stop there. Let's give number 2 because we read it. Right. It's up there. She put it up. You'll see up. She'll put it up again. Leslie, could you put the thing for the book? Again, put it up, maybe and pin it or something so people can see it. Maybe put a pin in it so they can see it. It stays there. All right, let's go to the second level, at-tabaqat al-thaniya, which is anul ijtihad fil masail. Right? Anul ijtihad fil masail. Right? So this is the level of those who do ijtihad, they're qualified to do ijtihad on particular legal questions that were not discussed by the imam of the school. So these cases were not dealt with by the imam and his companions. So later scholars, they dealt with them, like Imam al-Ghazali. Imam al-Ghazali is at the level of adl ijtihad fil masail. He's not at the level of Imam al-Shafi'i or even at the level of Imam Muzani. So do you know who Imam al-Ghazali? What was the title of Imam al-Ghazali? What was his title? What was he called? What was he called? Bashir, never. We're not going to deal with that question. Not until people learn. That is a question of difference of opinion, and we haven't even learned why there's difference of opinion. So that question about the direction of prayer, I'm not going to get into that issue till people understand other issues. Until you understand other issues, you'll never understand that issue. And it's not as simple as some people make it to promote their own position. It's not that simple at all. I want you to know, I've been around a long time. I can recognize an argument coming from 10 miles away. I can recognize an argument coming 10 miles away. I've been around a long time. I'm not a new jack. I've seen these things over and over and over again. I got a lot of years in this. And that doesn't exalt me. I'm just saying I've seen these. You know what I'm saying? I've seen this movie before. I have multiple times, over and over again. So much I could tell you everybody that had a part in the movie. That's how long I've been around. I could tell you the director, the screenwriter. I've seen it. You know, so I recognize certain things. Certain things I know not to deal with. And I know when to deal with them and how to deal with them. And that's one issue that will ruin everything we're trying to teach. Don't fall into that. When not understood properly. When understood properly is no problem. But when not understood properly is a big problem. Proof of Islam. So Imam al-Ghazali, I had to deal with something. I was avoiding that problem. So I addressed the problem before we even talk about it. Those who know what I'm talking about. Those who don't know, say Alhamdulillah, Allah save you from fitna. So Imam al-Ghazali is at that second level. Even though he was called Proof of Islam, even in the Shafi'i madhab, the opinion of al-Ghazali is not at the top levels, right? Not at the top levels. Even with all of his knowledge of Imam al-Ghazali. So we'll stop there. You got those two. You got al-Mujtahid Mutlaq. You got al-Ijtihad fil madhab, al-Ijtihad fil masail. You got all of those three, these first two levels and the Imam, and we'll come back tomorrow and talk about the others. Please, please, please. I know this stuff may be seem that we're doing both. I wish we didn't have to go through all this and we would just listen and learn and follow, but we don't trust that much and we've been taught to not follow. So we have to train each other to realize why we must follow. Because for common in a traditional Islamic society, everybody knows you got to follow a qualified scholarship. Everyone knows you got to follow a madhab. But in our time, welcome to the Wild Wild West. Wild Wild West, subhanAllah. May Allah help us. You'll see, it'll all pay off. Just be patient and stick with it. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but you'll see in time, it'll become easy. When you start lifting weights, in the beginning, you're aching, you're in pain, everything seems heavy, but after a while, it's just getting money, as they say. Getting money. That's how we're going to be. We can do it. We have the ability. All right, we'll pause there and put a pin in both of them so we know where we at. All right? So we're in W12, and if I get sleepy in the morning and forget where we at, remind me. So we at W12. And B2.0. That's where we're going next. So we want to finish this section of W12.1, and we'll finish that section, W12, and because it's all related to this issue of ijtihad, and then we'll keep going. All right, let's take a few questions quickly, and then we'll try to get out of here within the next 5 minutes, inshallah, 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, right? But the confusion comes from people quoting imams saying when a hadith is sahih, that is my madhab. How does all this go together? Number one, understand that the imams were living people. So when Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, إِذَا صَحَّ hadith فَهُوَ madhabi. When a hadith is sahih, that is my madhab. He was talking to Imam al-Muzani, Imam al-Buwaiti, men like that, right? He was talking to scholars at his rank who were scholars at that first level of ijtihad fil madhab. He wasn't talking to me and you. So don't take his conversation out of context. He wasn't standing on the minbar or in some public class with a bunch of laymen saying, whenever you find a hadith, sahih, that's my madhab. He was talking to people who knew his methodology, who knew all the tools of ijtihad, like al-Muzani, like al-Buwaiti, and others. Right? That's who he was talking to. He wasn't talking to us. Because for them, they knew his methodology of determining when a hadith is sahih, which we don't. If I ask any of those people, okay, you quoted Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i said, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِ فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِ, right? Whenever a hadith is sahih, it is my madhab. Okay, good. What is the methodology of Imam al-Shafi'i in determining if a hadith is sahih or not? Huh? Because he said it. So he knows when a hadith is sahih and when it is not. How did he determine that? That's a question. Since you, like, I ain't saying you, Abu Muhammad. I'm talking about the person who says that. Okay, since you're saying that, what was the methodology of Imam Shafi'i to determine the hadith is sahih? Do you know? I'll wait and listen. And the person doesn't have an answer at all because he doesn't know. He'll say, oh, a hadith is this. I said, that's the determinant. That's the criterion of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. What is, I didn't ask you what his was. I wasn't some book of the terminology of hadith that you learned a few things. I said Imam Shafi'i. Don't tell me about Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. Don't tell me about Ibn Kathir. Tell me what a Shafi'i said. You don't know. So then that doesn't apply to you. Because you cannot use it because you don't know how he determined the hadith is sahih. No, Malik. Much more than that. Much more than that. To apply that statement of a Shafi'i is way deeper than that. Way deeper than that. Much more involved. And then the next question, from which book you're going to find where Imam Shafi'i listed his criterion or how you can extract the criterion of determining a hadith is sahih from a Shafi'i. And the person don't even know the books of a Shafi'i. But he's quoting a Shafi'i. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. No, seriously. And I don't expect him to know that. Right? So that ain't like putting them down. It's just showing you talking about something you know what you're talking about. And it's not expected for you to know that. And it's not expected for you to do what you're doing either. No one expects some common person to determine if a hadith is sahih or hasan or da'if or fabricated. That's not his position. That's not his department. He works in the custodial department, not in the executive offices, except to come take out their trash. If you get the analogy. Can you use methodology to do ijtihad on old and new issues? Those who are qualified to do that can, not us. So that's the work of Imam al-Ghazali and some scholars after them. That's their work, that second level. Now, okay, just take out the trash and be noble. Don't go messing with the computer. Right? Right? Just take out the trash, alhamdulillah, and do your job, which is to follow. Be a good muqallid, not acting like you're a scholar. And that's fine. No blame with it, no criticism, nothing wrong. You're only blamed when you act like a police officer and you don't really have the licensing and the training and the authorization to make arrests. It's a matter of familiarity with the methodologies of the Imam and the level of knowledge related to it. That's how the levels differ. The scholarship in each era. But these are details. Don't go too deep. I just want you to get the points. So because that's a later, further study, I just want you to understand that there's levels to this. Maybe I'll put it that way. That's to be a little hip, right? That's all I'm trying to get across to you. Don't go into details. That's not my point. This is my point. That's it. That's my point. If you got this point and you're willing to accept that you're not at that top level, then this whole conversation is irrelevant to you. Once you understand that and you're willing to start at your level and accept your level, this whole conversation is irrelevant in relation to you. This is to make us understand that there are levels to this, and to understand our level and work at our level so we can get the job done. That's the point. Is that point clear? I'm going to close out. Is that point clear? If that point is not clear, let me know. And this is the last question I'm going to take. But right, is the point clear? Okay. Is it clear? I'm going to answer that, Tenweir. 1 second. I'm just waiting for is the point clear? That's all I'm trying to get at. Yes, yes. No, it's a lot of you in here. Please make sure. I'm not trying to impress you. That's not it. I want you to understand. That's it. If you're impressed and you don't understand, I failed. I don't want you to be impressed. I want you to understand so that you can apply, so that we can get a job done. So I'm serious. So don't like, man, that was deep. If you was deep and you didn't understand, it was a failure. Right? So did you understand? Right, Muti. Long as you got that, you got my whole point. Even if you don't memorize all these terms and you got that, you'll benefit. Because then, as we learn, we'll gradually get to that stuff. Right? Now we're in graduate school. That's where we're at right now. Eventually, we can go back to primary school, then secondary school, then high school, then university, college, then graduate school. Right now, we're in graduate school, postmasters. We're working on PhD stuff. We're going to get out of that and go back to primary school. I'm just giving you a window because some of us think we're university graduates with master's degrees. So I'm giving you a window into the field of study. When the waters are too deep and you take it in water, let me get you in the baby pool. And accept that until you learn how to swim. It's fine. It's no problem. I'm giving you all these analogies to make it crystal clear in your mind what I'm trying to say to us. Because the internet and the Google shakes will have us all over the place. And we listen to that stuff, and that's why we don't learn. That's why we go 20, 30 years and not know our deen, because we all over the place. And every time, as soon as you hang up, you're going to go log on to Mufti so-and-so, who's going to be all over the place. You don't need to follow no madhab. You don't need to be Ashari. You don't need to be Maturidi. You can do, yeah, all right. Now at least you're armed and equipped to know that that stuff doesn't make any sense. And the one who says it knows it doesn't make any sense, but it works for their politics. It works for their politics, for their fame, for their getting more followers, but they're destroying our religion and they don't realize it. Till we get a lawsuit because somebody got killed, figurative speaking. You know, someone crashed and you didn't know how to design the airbag to release properly, and they sue your company. Oh my goodness. La ilaha illallah. So Tenweir, to ask your question, answer your question, put Tenweir's question back, because many people will ask this. That'll be it. I'll close out. If a person follows Shafi'i, that there are times when fulfilling an obligation, like fasting, for instance, is too difficult because of sickness, can they fast according to another school that is easier? All right, I'm going to answer this with this statement. The common person doesn't have a school of thought. The common person doesn't have a madhab. His madhab is the madhab of the scholar who gives him the religious judgment. Right? Did you hear what I said? The common person, they call it al-ami in Arabic, does not have a madhab. His madhab is the madhab of the faqih, of the scholar, in any of the four madhabs that gives him the ruling. So he doesn't have to be Shafi'i or Maliki or Hanbali or Hanafi. If the Hanafi scholar gives him a valid ruling according to the Hanafi school, he can follow that. If the Shafi'i scholar gives him a valid ruling according to the Shafi'i school, he can follow that. He cannot mix the opinions, but he follows the opinion in that issue from any qualified scholar or teacher with among the four madhabs, because he's not necessarily registered or enrolled in any madhab because he's a common person. He's a beginner. He's only enrolled in a madhab, if you want to say, when he knows all the cases according to that madhab. But if you don't, then you're not. So if you only know how to make wudu, but you don't know how to make istinja, you're not a Shafi'i, right? And most people, they don't study properly, so they never read a book in fiqh with a teacher, so they don't know. So for them, wherever it is a trustworthy teacher from one of the relied upon schools gives him a judgment, he follows that. And which is an indication to you why, and he needs to be in that school. So this idea of a person who's a Shafi'i telling you all the rules of the Hanafis and the Malikis and the Hanbali, say this is the rule for everybody. He's not a Hanafi scholar. He's not exhausted the Hanafi madhab to know the cases. So he cannot give you a judgment according to the Hanafi school that he has not studied because he's Shafi'i. So I'm indicating something to you. So somebody say, this is the position of all madhabs. Did you check a scholar from every madhab to make sure that position is right? Because if a Shafi'i is talking about the Hanafi school, he might be mistaken. Or he might not know all the cases because of different levels in the school. Or if the Maliki is talking about the Hanbali madhab, he may be mistaken by not knowing all the cases in the school. Do you understand my point? You see how serious this gets? So therefore, you need to follow a trustworthy teacher within one school. So even if you're going to take a ruling from another school, you need to take it from a teacher within that school and learn the conditions, the integrals, and the invalidators in that case properly. So you cannot just say, I'm Hanafi. What are the rules to this issue in the Hanafi school? Did you take it from a reliable Hanafi teacher, from reliable Hanafi books? Then you can apply it. You follow? Not just, I'm Hanafi today, I'm Shafi'i tomorrow, with no rules and conditions and prerequisites. So in any case, you follow a school, at minimum, you should know the conditions for the validity of that act, the integrals for performing the act, and the invalidators to be avoided so the act remains valid. In any case, in any school. Is that clear for everyone? Is this clear? Because it's my last question. Is it clear? Clear, clear, clear? No? Tell you. I know it may seem a lot. I'm telling you, I'm doing all this so that we will learn properly one day, and we can learn in a systematic structure, which these schools and these madhabs were designed to protect us from going astray. But we got to clear up a lot of confusion. First, we got to get the weeds out. We got to level the grass. Then once we got a good lawn, then all we got to do is maintain it. Right now, we got a wild, wild west grass growing all over, weeds, poison ivy, everything in our grass. We got to clean all that stuff up, get a nice yard, and then maintain our yard. right? So this is where we're working at. May Allah reward you all. May Allah make us successful. But we'll get it done, inshallah. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Oh. Not me, Sheikh Abdul Rahman's Risal to Jamia at 6 o'clock. And we'll continue with Allahumma salli ala Muhammad with our class tomorrow morning at 7. Please review. You got a lot of notes. It's quickly to get behind. After class, take some time throughout the day to study. And inshallah, we'll come back to it tomorrow. So if I didn't answer any questions, inshallah, we'll hit them tomorrow. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.